Right, so Jordan have just announced the reintroduction of compulsory national service for the first time since 1991. Officially, it was framed as a project of discipline, youth development, and national identity. In reality, it was an unmistakable signal of fear. They are panicking. Just days earlier, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu had gone on television to endorse a vision of Greater Israel that erases Palestine altogether and, by implication, puts Jordan's sovereignty on the chopping block. Jordan is completely gone under this plan, you see. 6,000 young men will be drafted for 3 months beginning in 2026. They will be denied phones, paid a modest stipend, and threatened with penalties if they refuse to comply. To the Jordanian monarchy, these measures are a show of resolve. But to outside observers, though, they're a symptom of desperation and perhaps of chickens finally coming home to roost. Jordan has bent and broken, but it has not been spared. For decades, the kingdom has signed humiliating treaties, imported Israeli gas, coordinated with Mossad, and even crushed its own citizen solidarity with Palestine. Its leaders believed that appeasement bought survival. Now, after the destruction of Gaza and the annexation of the West Bank, Netanyahu has revived the century-old claim that Jordan is Palestine. The kingdom's reward for decades of loyalty is to be cast as the next Palestine. So while the question is very much being asked about whether Palestine can survive under relentless Israeli assault and global inaction, Jordan appears to be asking themselves whether they will too. Right, so Jordanian assistance and acquiescence to Israel has disgusted and enraged many people for a long time now, many, many years. So for as much as the idea of Greater Israel also enrages people, there's a few who might be considering this karma for the kingdom too. But if you're of a mind to not care, we do need to, because it's proof that even with the end of Palestine as we know it, potentially, looking at that with the world still seemingly refusing to step in, Netanyahu will not stop there. He will always need another war to keep himself in power and out of that courtroom, because then there are problems that are just not going away for him. So to understand Jordan's predicament particularly, though, let's first look at the collapse of the Palestinian national project west of the river as it stands. The so-called two-state solution has long been described as an illusion, and rightly so. It's a nonsense. It has just provided cover for too many states to largely do nothing as Israel has continued to persecute the Palestinian people for so many decades. Israel would never permit such a thing, and they're actively annihilating the idea now. It's less an illusion in 2025 as it is a corpse already dead and buried. In the West Bank, Israel has entrenched its settlement project to the point that Palestinian territorial continuity has basically been ended. Israel have legislated it so. But when the de facto governor of the area is Bezalel Smotrich, what chance do they ever have? Settlement blocks, military zones, and bypass roads have left Palestinian enclaves fragmented and surrounded. The Palestinian Authority functions less as a sovereign body and more as a subcontractor of occupation, dependent on Israeli goodwill for survival and doing their dirty work for them when required. De facto annexation has become open absorption, the West Bank now about to be split in two by Israeli expansion of illegal settlements accompanied by legislative and judicial moves in Israel to formalise the new reality over land that is not theirs, yet have been allowed to illegally occupy for well over the last 50 years. In Gaza, the devastation has obviously been even more stark, though. Israel's war has left vast swathes of the Strip completely uninhabitable, destroyed hospitals, schools and farmland, deliberately engineered famine conditions. United Nations agencies, humanitarian organisations, even Israeli human rights groups have described the situation exactly as it is, a genocide. Yet still the inaction on governmental parts around the world makes you sick. Starvation is no longer incidental, it's a weapon of war and has been for months now, and displacement appears not to be temporary, but a permanent re-engineering of demographics happening all over again now. You only need to look at Gaza City to see the drive to displace half of Gaza's entire population now, over 1 million people, to see that. For Jordan, this erasure of Palestine happening on their doorstep as they stood by, as they looked on for decades, as they let their airspace be used to stop Iranian missiles and drones and the like back in June, isn't just alarming, but an existential warning. In the minds of Zionist extremists, the demise of Palestinian statehood west of the river naturally points to Jordan as the solution to their Palestinian problem. The notion that Jordan is Palestine has been present in revisionist Zionism since the early 20th century, voiced by figures such as Ze'ev Jabotinsky and later embraced by Israeli prime ministers from Menachem Begin and Ariel Sharon to Netanyahu himself. Netanyahu, whose political lineage is steeped in this tradition, has resurrected the claim at a moment when Israel has achieved decisive control over Gaza and the West Bank, seemingly unopposed. Too much hand-wringing going on elsewhere in the world, not enough action going on. The implication, unfortunately, is brutally simple. If Palestinians cannot exist in their historic lands west of the Jordan, they can be displaced into the kingdom to the east. Jordan therefore finds itself not merely a neighbour of a genocidal apartheid state, but cast as the next territorial and demographic target. Netanyahu's televised embrace of Greater Israel earlier this month was not a casual remark either. That was a deliberate provocation too. And for Jordan, it was a direct threat. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned the comments as a violation of international law and a danger to Jordanian sovereignty. Parliamentary blocs described them as colonial and expansionist. Analysts in Amman noted that this was the articulation of a long-standing ideological commitment to expansion. Prime Minister Dr. Jafar Hassan sought to calm the public by dismissing the remarks as an illusion. But the monarchy, King Abdullah, was clearly shaken by it all, because within days, the decision to reintroduce national service was announced. The New Arab, amongst other outlets, linked the two developments, noting that the timing was too close to be coincidental. It couldn't possibly be a coincidence. Reintroducing conscription is both a symbolic and a practical act, though. On the surface, it was framed as a project of youth discipline. Let's sort these kids out a bit. A national project to build responsibility and loyalty. But in reality, it was an admission of vulnerability and a warning signal. For the Jordanian public, it suggested that the state recognised the gravity of the threat now. For Israel, it was meant to show that Jordan would not be an entirely passive victim. Yet the scale of the programme, 3 months of training for 6,000 men in the first year, underscored the limitations too. This was not preparation for deterrence, but a gesture of mobilisation, a sign that the monarchy was rattled by the spectre of annexationist rhetoric turning into policy. Why is Jordan so vulnerable? Some of that lies in the history of its long accommodation with Israel. It's a position, arguably, they put themselves in. Since the 1994 Wadi Araba Treaty, Jordan has sought to normalise relations with Israel, hoping to secure its borders and its monarchy that way. It is engaged in intelligence sharing, joint security coordination, and economic integration. It has imported Israeli gas despite public opposition, purchased water, and facilitated infrastructure schemes that bound its economy to Israel. Diplomatically, it has often softened Arab League statements to avoid isolating Israel. At home, the monarchy has also policed its own population to avoid embarrassing its treaty partner. Jordan's majority of Palestinian origin, so many of its citizens are descendants of the Nakba of 1948, has consistently shown solidarity with the Palestinian cause, but protests have been met with batons and tear gas and arrests. Amnesty International documented waves of repression after October 2023, with thousands detained over the course of a year. By last month, the scale reached historic levels. Hundreds of activists, politicians, and even a 72-year-old former mayor were arrested in what was described as the largest crackdown since the political crisis of 1989. Detainees reported beatings and abuse. One young man died in custody after being subjected to a severe physical assault during detention. The case of activist Ayman Abali illustrates the cynicism too. Abali posted videos urging the government and public to act against Gaza starvation. For this, he was detained for a week and charged under the 2023 cybercrime law with publishing material deemed harmful to social harmony. The law, with its vague prohibitions, has become a weapon to criminalise dissent, particularly expressions of solidarity with Palestine. By policing speech and protest so aggressively, Jordan has demonstrated to Israel and its Gulf patrons that it is willing to suppress its own people in exchange for aid and goodwill. Yet this accommodation has brought it no safety. Israel does not see Jordan as a partner, but as pliant, weak, and ultimately disposable. The very fact that Jordan has repressed its own citizens for Israel's sake proves, in the eyes of expansionists, that it can be pushed a lot further yet. Accommodation rather than securing sovereignty has marked Jordan as the path of least resistance, and you kind of get the impression that they know it now too. The repression last month also revealed external influences. Reports from Middle East Eye indicated that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates encouraged Jordan to crack down, offering financial support in exchange for that. Detainees alleged Israeli pressure as well. Jordan's domestic authoritarianism was thus entangled with regional geopolitics. The monarchy was policing its people not only for its own survival, but to reassure its own foreign patrons too. And this all underscores the fragility of Jordanian sovereignty. The state is not acting independently, but as a client, utterly beholden to aid flows and diplomatic leverage. What exactly is King Abdullah king of? You might well ask that question, in which case, mightn't you? This fragility is compounded by Jordan's internal contradictions. The monarchy claims custodianship of Jerusalem's holy sites and presents itself as a defender of Palestinian rights, yet it arrests its citizens for chanting solidarity with Gaza. It presents itself as a bulwark of regional stability, yet it uses repression to silence the very voices that might give it popular legitimacy. And this hypocrisy erodes trust and leaves the state brittle. When external shocks end up coming, therefore, a regime that relies on suppression rather than legitimacy ends up struggling to mobilize society for genuine defense. Jordan's vulnerability is not confined to its western frontier with Israel, though. To the north lies Syria, still fractured by years of civil war, and Jordan has found itself engaging with Ahmed al-Sharaa, formerly known as Abu Muhammad al-Jilani, the one-time leader of al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS. Syria is now led by a terrorist, therefore. Al-Jilani's rebranded himself as a statesman now, though, hasn't he? Presenting HTS as a governing authority, despite still being a prescribed entity in many places, including here in the UK, and seeking to normalise relations with regional states. Talks between Amman and Damascus are focused on reconstruction and border security and, crucially, water. Jordan and Syria share the Yarmouk River and the Al-Wada Dam. The dam provides approximately 40% of Jordan's fresh water. For one of the most water-stressed countries in the world, already burdened by over 1 million Syrian refugees, this is existential. Agreements have been reaching on fairer distribution, monitoring illegal wells, and exploring cloud seeding techniques. Yet Jordan's dependence on Syria is precarious. Al-Jilani has given interviews insisting that Syria will not be used to launch attacks on Israel, clearly signalling a desire to win Israeli tolerance. For Amman, this is deeply troubling, therefore. The same man with whom Jordan must negotiate water and border stability with may end up pivoting to align with Israel even more than them. The kingdom's survival is therefore partly contingent on deals with a former al-Qaeda leader whose loyalties remain very, very fluid, much like the stuff they're dealing with him over. The situation is further complicated by Israel's actions in southwestern Syria. Media continue to report Israeli incursions near the Al-Wada Dam, creating fears that Jordan's water supply could be strangled at will by Israel. But then, this part of Syria is also, of course, on the Greater Israel map too. Analysts at the Quincy Institute describe this as an existential threat, pointing out that Jordan's survival depends on flows controlled by powers beyond its control. Whether or not Israel physically controls the dam, the perception of vulnerability is itself destabilizing. So taken all together, Jordan's vulnerabilities form a daunting picture, don't they? To the west, Israel has erased Palestine, in so many words, and may seek to displace Palestinians eastward. To the north, Jordan depends on a fractured Syrian regime and an untrustworthy al-Jilani for water and border security. Internally, the monarchy undermines its own legitimacy by repressing solidarity with Palestine. And externally, it's beholden to Gulf aid and US military guarantees too. What a mess. The reinstatement of national service, therefore, is symptomatic of the condition it's in. Officially about youth development, it is in truth an expression of fear. It's meant to signal readiness, but it betrays weakness. A conscription scheme of 3 months for a few thousand recruits cannot defend a kingdom of 10 million from the designs of a regional superpower. It can, however, demonstrate that the monarchy recognises its vulnerability and is trying, however inadequately, to prepare for that. If Israel were to target Jordan, what form would it take, though? Well, the most likely scenario is not a conventional invasion, though that could easily be done, but indirect coercion. One possibility is mass expulsion. Palestinians in the West Bank pushed across the river, creating a demographic and political crisis for Jordan. There's only so many crossing points into Jordan, of course, but you can imagine they'd go there. Another is water coercion, with Israel restricting flows from shared rivers and the Yarmouk Basin in Syria to pressure Amman. And a third is just plain border provocation, manufacturing security crises that end up destabilising the kingdom. Israel would undoubtedly seek to justify such actions. It might claim that Jordan cannot control militant infiltration or smuggling, presenting itself as acting in self-defence, because that always works for them, doesn't it? Usually works for them. It might allege Iranian proxy activity, recycling its rhetoric from Syria and Iraq, because that's worked too. It might describe Jordan as a failed state collapsing under refugee pressures, thereby legitimising its own intervention. Or it might openly assert that Jordan is Palestine, declaring the Palestinian question resolved by displacement. Yet these narratives would collapse under scrutiny. Jordan has been one of Israel's most reliable security partners since 1994. Its General Intelligence Directorate has suppressed militants ruthlessly. The US has troops stationed in Jordan and conducts joint exercises annually. To describe Jordan as an uncontrollable terrorist haven would just be implausible. The claim that it is a failed state would ring hollow, as Jordan still possesses functioning institutions, and the argument that Jordan is Palestine would confirm the charge of ethnic cleansing that already dogs Israel after Gaza, and rightfully so. But the other question that also remains is if Israel did move against Jordan, would the international community actually show them any sympathy? Because it's going to be mixed, isn't it? In Gaza and the West Bank, Israel has managed to frame its campaigns as counter-terrorism, muddying global opinion. Against Jordan, that frame would fail. Jordan is not Hamas, it is not Islamic Jihad, it is a treaty partner of Israel. It is a moderate Arab monarchy, a major non-NATO ally of the United States. It's bent over backwards to suppress dissent and accommodate Israeli interests. An attack on Jordan would look like naked aggression, imperial conquest against a loyal partner. But would anybody stop Israel? Really? Global sympathy would therefore surely be greater, you would think. Arab states would be forced to condemn the Gulf regimes, even those in normalised relations with Israel would struggle to justify complicity in that. Western governments would face embarrassment as they would be defending an aggressor against their own ally, but it's Israel, so you just know they would. Civil society across the world, already mobilised by Gaza, would rally to Jordan's defence, so many would still argue that they asked for it. Sympathy, of course, does not guarantee protection. This is Israel, after all. Washington and London might condemn, but they will still shield Israel diplomatically, won't they? The Gulf may issue statements but avoid action because that's part of the course. The Global South may denounce, but they lack the enforcement mechanisms. Jordan can find itself the focus of rhetorical support but little material defence. That said, Israel blatantly spreading beyond Palestine would elicit much anger from across the Middle East and fear with it. Jordan's predicament, therefore, is tragic but also instructive. For decades, the monarchy suppressed its own people, bought Israeli gas, signed peace treaties, kept faith with Washington. It believed that by accommodating Israel, it could secure its sovereignty. It's looking like they chose wrong now, isn't it? Instead, accommodation has left the kingdom brittle, exposed, and now in the firing line of Zionist expansionism. Netanyahu's rhetoric is not idle. He doesn't say these things by accident. With Gaza destroyed and the West Bank basically being absorbed, Jordan is the next logical frontier once they've finished in those places. Its water can be squeezed, its borders can be destabilised, its Palestinian majority can be recast as an alternative homeland. If Greater Israel really is on the cards, Jordan is surely the logical next target because it is the weakest. Jordan's reintroduction of conscription is therefore less about military preparedness than about existential dread. It's a state grasping for symbols of control even as its fate gets decided elsewhere. Jordan has bent and broken, and yet the threat only grows closer. Appeasement never works. The question is no longer just whether the Palestinians will have a state. The question is whether Jordan itself and other nations beyond that, if Netanyahu's words truly mean something, as Jordan thinks they did clearly, will continue to exist. Nothing quite exemplifies how much the West will side with Israel under such circumstances as abandoning all pretense of justice does, though. And the US decision to effectively book flight plans for a senior Israeli cyber chief caught in a child predator sting in Nevada, yet despite being banged to rights, he was still permitted to leave the country. Does the law not apply to Israelis in the US then? Get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping support the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.